the billionaire froze. Hey there, drop a quick comment and tell me where you're tuning in from. I love connecting with you all. If this video brought a smile or made you think, hit that like button and subscribe to join the journey. Your support truly fuels my passion and keeps this community alive. Can't wait to read your amazing thoughts down below. What if one simple glance at a stranger in a diner pulled back the curtain on a secret buried for decades? What kind of secret, a family connection so unexpected it shakes the very foundation of who you thought you were? What if that secret was waiting for the right moment to change everything? Let's begin by setting the scene. Elliot Carver, 45, is a name whispered in boardrooms from Silicon Valley to Singapore. His tech empire, built on AI-driven analytics and ruthless ambition, had made him a billionaire by 30. But behind his success lay a deeply personal story, one he had tried to bury. Willow Creek, Ohio, was where it all began. It was also the place he had sworn never to return. The town held memories of loss, abandonment, and unanswered questions. Now, years later, he found himself standing outside Mabel's Diner, a place frozen in time, its gravel crunching under his polished shoes and the weight of 22 years pulling at his chest. He had come back for closure, for answers to the questions that had haunted him since childhood. This wasn't just about revisiting the past, it was about understanding why his father had shut him out, why his mother had died when he was just 17, and what secrets had been buried beneath the surface of his life. He wanted to walk the streets of his childhood, to face the house where his mother's laughter once echoed, and to finally understand the truth about the man who had raised him, only to become a stranger. Willow Creek hadn't changed much over the years. The same sagging porches, rusted pickup trucks, and familiar faces greeted him. Even the diner remained unchanged, with its chipped Formica counter and a jukebox stuck on Johnny Cash. As he slid into a booth, the vinyl creaked under his weight, and he ordered a black coffee, though he had no intention of drinking it. Instead, he let his mind drift through the memories of his youth, the laughter of his mother, the cold silence of his father, and the sense of being an outsider in his own home. That's when he saw her. Clara Bennett, mid-30s, moved with the efficiency of someone who had worked double shifts for years. Her auburn hair was tied back, loose strands framing a face that was pretty but tired. Her name tag read Clara, and her smile was practiced, warm but guarded. There was something about her presence that caught his attention, not just because she was attractive, but because of the way she carried herself, like someone who had learned to survive on grit and determination. But it was the pendant that struck him like a freight train. A silver crescent moon, identical to the one in a faded Polaroid of his mother. His heart skipped a beat as he fumbled for his phone, pulling up the scanned photo of Ellen Carver, his mother, young and radiant, the pendant gleaming at her throat. His pulse hammered in his ears. That pendant was supposed to be one of a kind, a gift from his father to his mother. Or so he had always believed. "Nice pendant," he said when Clara brought his coffee, his voice tighter than he intended. She touched it absently, her practiced smile flickering for just a moment. "Thanks. It was my mom's." "Your mom?" Elliot's throat felt like sandpaper. The words came out rougher than he meant them to. Why did this feel so important? Why did this woman, this waitress in a small-town diner, hold something so intimately connected to his past? Clara's eyes narrowed slightly, sensing something off. "Why do you ask?" The name meant nothing to him, but it felt like a key turning in a lock. He muttered something vague about the pendant being unique and let her walk away, his mind racing. He scribbled notes on a napkin: Clara, Leia, pendant, mom. There was something bigger here than coincidence. And Elliot Carver didn't leave questions unanswered. His entire career had been built on data, on piecing together patterns others missed. This pendant was a puzzle, and he needed to solve it. He started with the diner, chatting up locals over greasy fries. They told him that Clara was a fixture in Willow Creek, a single mother to a 10-year-old boy named Max. She worked tirelessly, scraping by on tips and grit. Her mother, Leia Bennett, had died when Clara was 15, leaving her to fend for herself. No one knew who her father was. Leia had never spoken of him. The locals painted a picture of a strong, independent woman who had built a life for herself despite the odds. But there was something else they didn't know. Something hidden in the shadows of her past. Elliot hired Tom Hargrove, a private investigator with a knack for digging up buried truths. Tom was a grizzled ex-cop, the kind who had seen too much to be surprised by anything. His first report was sparse but telling. Clarara's birth certificate listed Leah Marie Bennett as her mother, and the father was unknown. Leah had been a seamstress, quiet, private, living in a small apartment above the town's only laundromat. She had died of cancer in 2005, leaving Clarara to bounce between foster homes. One detail stood out: Leah had lived in Willow Creek in the late 1980s, overlapping with the time Elliot's parents had been there. This was more than a coincidence. This was a pattern. A thread leading back to the past. And now, Elliot had to follow it. His next move was personal. He drove to the old Carver house, now boarded up and falling apart. The paint peeled like dead skin, and the yard was overgrown. Standing in the yard, he remembered the sound of his mother's voice, soft and warm. He remembered the silence that followed her death, the way his father had shut him out. Richard Carver had been a respected lawyer, distant and emotionless, a man who kept his feelings locked away. Elliot hadn't spoken to him in years. Their last fight had been bitter, over money, over abandonment. But now, he needed answers. The nursing home was an hour away, a sterile place that smelled of antiseptic and regret. Richard, now 72, sat in a wheelchair by a window, his once sharp features softened by age. His eyes lit up when he saw Elliot, but there was a flicker of fear in them too. "Dad," Elliot said, cutting to the chase. "Mom's pendant, the crescent moon. Where did it come from?" Richard's hands shook, his gaze darting away. "Why are you asking about that now?" "I saw it," Elliot said, his voice low. "On a waitress in town. Clarara Bennett. It's the same one." Richard's face went ashen. "Leave it alone, Elliot. You don't know what you're stirring up." But Elliot pressed on. "What aren't you telling me? Why does she have Mom's pendant?" Richard clammed up, his jaw tightening. Elliot left frustrated but determined. He tasked Tom with digging deeper, and the PI delivered a bombshell. A letter had been found in a box of Leah's belongings, donated to the Willow Creek Historical Society. It was from Richard, dated 1987, addressed to Leah. "I can't keep doing this. Ellen's pregnant. I have to stay with her. I'm sorry. The pendant is for our girl. Keep her safe." Elliot read it until the words blurred. Clarara was his half-sister. His father had had an affair before Elliot was born. A secret buried for 35 years. The pendant wasn't just jewelry, it was a confession. A piece of his father's shame. The truth was a knife. Cutting through everything Elliot thought he knew. He watched Clarara from a distance, not as a stranger, but as family. He saw her pick up Max from school, her smile bright despite the shadows under her eyes. He saw her count tips at the diner, her fingers trembling as she tallied bills. She was strong, but the world had worn her down, and she had no idea she had a brother sitting just 10 feet away. Elliot wrestled with what to do. Telling Clarara could upend her life. She had built something stable, however fragile, for her and Max. But the pendant was a tether. A link to a past they both deserved to understand. He started spending more time at the diner, learning her rhythms. She was quick-witted, kind to regulars, fierce when a drunk got handsy. Max, a skinny kid with her Orbine hair, sometimes did homework in a corner booth, his pencil scratching as Clarara worked. One night, Elliot stayed until closing. The diner was empty, the jukebox silent. Clarara was wiping down the counter, her pendant catching the light. He took a deep breath. "Clarara, I need to talk to you about that pendant." She paused, her rag still. "What about it?" He slid the photo of his mother across the counter. "This is Ellen Carver, my mom. She had the same pendant." Clarara's eyes flicked to the photo, then back to him, weary. "So it's just a necklace." probably mass-produced. It's not. Elliot's voice was steady, though his heart pounded. It's custom-made by my father. For your mother, Leia. Clara's face hardened. What are you saying? He told her everything, the letter, the affair, their shared father. Her expression shifted from confusion to fury to something raw, like grief. You're lying, she said, her voice breaking. Why would you come here and say this? I'm not lying, he said. He pulled out the letter, sliding it toward her. Read it. She did, her hands shaking. When she looked up, tears streaked her face. My whole life I thought my dad just left. And now you're telling me he was here in this town with a wife and a son, with you. Elliot nodded, his throat tight. I didn't know Clara. Not until now. She grabbed her coat, her movements jerky. I need to think. Stay away from me. Elliot gave her space, but the truth was a weight he couldn't shake. He returned to Richard, confronting him in the nursing home's stark visiting room. You had a daughter, he said, his voice cold. And you let her grow up with nothing. Richard's eyes were wet, his voice barely a whisper. I love Leia. But Ellen was pregnant. I made a choice I thought was the right one. You thought wrong, Elliot snapped. You left Clara to struggle. You left Leia to die alone. Richard broke then, confessing everything. He had met Leia at a town fair, her laugh drawing him in. Their affair had been brief but intense. He had given her the pendant, a custom piece he had made for her, as a goodbye. He thought she had left town. He didn't know about Clara until years later, when it was too late. Elliot's anger burned, but so did his need to make things right. He found Clara at her apartment, a cramped place with peeling wallpaper and toys scattered on the floor. Max was asleep on the couch, a science book open beside him. Clara let him in, her face guarded but softer. I don't want your money, she said before he could speak. Or your pity. I'm not offering either, Elliot said. I'm offering family, if you'll have me. Clara's eyes searched his, looking for a lie. Then she pulled out a box from under her bed, filled with Leia's keepsakes. Among them was another letter, one Richard never knew about. It was from Leia to Clara, meant for her 18th birthday. Clara, my heart. Your father loved us in his way. He thought I gave you up, but I couldn't. You were my strength. The pendant is his promise and mine. Forgive him if you can. Live fiercely, my girl. Elliot's breath caught. Richard hadn't just abandoned Leia, he had thought Clara was gone, given up for adoption. The lie had shaped their lives. A secret within a secret. Clara's eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. He didn't even know I existed. He didn't, Elliot said. But I do. And I'm here now. The revelation changed everything. Clara agreed to meet Richard, but it wasn't easy. The nursing home visit was tense, the air thick with years of unspoken pain. Richard, frail and tearful, told Clara about Leia, her laugh, her courage, the way she had loved fiercely despite everything. Clara listened, her face a mask. But Max, curious and kind, asked questions that softened the room. Did you ever meet my mom? He asked, his small voice cutting through the tension. I did, Richard said, his voice breaking. She was wonderful. Clara didn't forgive him, not yet, but she didn't walk away. Elliot watched, torn between anger at his father and hope for his sister. He started spending time with Clara and Max, small gestures at first, helping with Max's science fair project, bringing takeout when Clara worked late. They talked about Leia, about Ellen, about the lives they had led apart. Clara was guarded, but she led him in inch by inch. Then came the second twist. Tom, the PI, uncovered one last piece, a bank account set up by Richard in 1988 in Leia's name. It was small, a few $1,000s, but it had grown with interest over decades. Richard had meant it for Leia, a final gesture he thought she'd never used. She hadn't, because she had never known about it. The account was still there, enough to cover Max's college fund. Clara cried when Elliot told her, not for the money, but for what it meant. Her father had cared, in his flawed way. Why didn't he tell her, she asked, her voice raw. He was ashamed, Elliot said. He thought he was protecting everyone. He was wrong. Elliot and Clara built a fragile but real bond. He didn't try to fix her life with his wealth. That wasn't what she needed. Instead, he showed up. He took Max to baseball games, taught him to code, laughed when Clara teased him about his fancy suits. She, in turn, shared her world, the diner stories, Leia's recipes, Max's quirky sense of humor. They were siblings not by choice, but by truth, and they chose to make it work. Richard's health declined, but he lived long enough to see Clara and Max regularly. He never asked for forgiveness, and Clara never offered it. But they found a quiet understanding. Max, with a child's clarity, became the bridge, asking Richard for stories about the past, stories that healed as much as they hurt. Elliot didn't stay in Willow Creek full-time. His life was too big for that. But he bought a small house nearby, a place to return to. He funded a community center in Leia's name, not as a grand gesture, but as a way to honor the woman who had raised his sister. Clara ran it, her strength and warmth turning it into a hub for kids like Max, kids who needed a chance. The diner became their meeting place. Every Sunday, Elliot, Clara, and Max sat in the same booth, sharing coffee and stories. The pendant, once a mystery, was now a symbol of survival, of promises kept. Clara wore it proudly, a reminder of her mother's love and her own resilience. 1 year later, the community center's grand opening drew a crowd. Clara stood at the podium, her voice steady as she spoke about Leia, about second chances. Max, now 11, grinned from the front row, holding a model rocket he had built with Elliot's help. Richard was there too, in his wheelchair, his eyes bright with something like redemption. Elliot watched from the back, his heart full. He had come to Willow Creek seeking closure, but he had found something better, a family he hadn't known he needed. As Clara cut the ribbon and the crowd cheered, he caught her eye. She smiled a real smile, not the guarded one from the diner. He nodded back, the weight of the past lifting. Later, at Mabel's, they sat together, the neon sign buzzing outside. Max was telling a story about his rocket, his hands waving, and Clara laughed, her pendant catching the light. Elliot leaned back, coffee in hand, and realized this was home, not the town, but the people. The pendant had led him here, to a truth that broke him open and made him whole. The story wasn't perfect. There were still scars, still silences. But it was theirs. Built on forgiveness, rebuilt from secrets, and stronger for it. As the jukebox kicked on, playing Johnny Cash, Elliot knew he'd keep coming back, for Clara, for Max, for the family they had created. If this story resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who might find meaning in it. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video. Let me know in the comments how this story made you feel, and what secrets you've discovered in your own life. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and remember, sometimes the most powerful truths come from the smallest moments.